I'm McKinney Smith. After going through a divorce, my sister passing away, experiencing narcissistic abuse, and some significant health scares, I realized through sharing my story that I wasn't alone in my suffering. Suffering, subjective distress generated by the experience of being out of balance. In a deep dive to holistically heal mind, body, and soul is where I discovered peace, clarity, and connection. It is impossible to be truly wise without some real life hardship, and we cannot develop post-traumatic wisdom without making it through, and most importantly, through it together. Social connection builds resilience, and resilience helps create post-traumatic wisdom, and that wisdom leads to hope. Hope for you and others witnessing and participating in your healing, and hope for your community. A healthy community is a healing community, and a healing community is full of hope because it has seen its own people weather, survive, and thrive. This episode is brought to you by Shades of You, an affirmation journal coloring book to help you find peace, clarity, and connection. I created this book with Black women in mind. Relaxation, creativity, and self-love wrapped in one. Shades of You is an adult coloring book created for Black women to celebrate their beauty, strength, and diversity of our experiences. So take a break, de-stress, and express yourself with empowering illustrations available now on Amazon or at mckinney-smith.com. Today's guest is Dr.Thema Bryant. She's a psychologist, author, professor, sacred artist, and minister who is leading the way in creating healthy relationships, healing traumas, and overcoming stress and oppression. Dr. Thema is the author of the newly released book, Matters of the Heart, which aims to empower readers to connect with themselves and to others, delving into topics such as control issues, emotional unavailability, practical activation, activities, case studies, and teaching how to shift mindset and patterns around romance. Dr. Thema Bryant completed her doctorate in clinical psychology at Duke University and her postdoctoral training at Harvard Medical Center's Victims of Violence program. Most recently, she was the 2023 president of the American Psychological Association, APA, and is the host of the Homecoming podcast. So please welcome to the show, Dr. Thema.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I am always honored when incredible women like yourself agree to come on and share not only just your story and your expertise, but your time and your energy. I do not take that lightly. You could be anywhere in the world right now, and I'm honored that you are here with us.
Well, I am honored by your invitation, and thank you for holding space for our healing.
It's been a huge part of my journey, and I strongly believe that, when we learn something, we should teach it to others. So as I've been evolving and on my own healing journey over the last, I'm going to say it's almost 7 years since we've had this podcast. It has been an honor to have guests on every week to share their stories and their expertise so that we are globally, creating conversations about healing.
Yes. Well, congratulations. That really is an accomplishment to keep it going over the years.
Thank you. Thank you. So I like to start the show with a bit of an icebreaker question just to kind of get to know, I guess, who you were before society or culture or even our families, limited our beliefs. So I would love to know, what is your earliest childhood memory that defines who you are today?
So my earliest memory is funny as things go full circle. But I was in preschool and I was asked what I wanted to be when I grow up. And I said I wanted to be a house for the homeless.
Mm.
And I was told that a person can't be a house, so you have to pick something else.
Oh.
And that resonates with me because my first book for the public was called Homecoming. And someone said to me, well, you did know what you were talking about. You became a house
Mm,
as a psychologist and a minister, that you're a house. And so I love that.
I love it. I love it. Okay. You have had such an incredible journey, from earning your doctorate and writing transformative books. What inspired you to dedicate your career to psychology, healing, and empowerment?
Well, growing up, first let me say there's the story in our conscious mind, and then there's like an unconscious story, right? So my conscious answer to that question has usually been that my father was a pastor. And so growing up, I often saw him doing pastoral care and counseling, and people would often call our home when they were in distress. And I've always been what would be considered a sensitive soul. And then when I heard about the field of psychology, it matched with me wanting to bear witness and be present for people as they walk through the difficulties of life.
Mhm.
Uh, and so that's, the story of my awareness is my father as pastoral counselor. And so then me becoming a psychologist is no big surprise. The deeper story is having grown up with a mother who lived with depression and anxiety, that during my childhood years was undiagnosed and untreated.
Mhm.
Later, I'm grateful that she did receive the diagnosis and receive services. It also became very vocal in talking about her own mental health journey.
Mhm.
So that's the deeper part of the story of knowing intimately and deeply the impact on the person, on the family, of mental illness.
Mhm. I strongly believe after, almost 7 years of recording this podcast that our pain births our purpose. Everyone that has come on the show and spoken about, what they do and how they serve, it's connected to them transmuting their pain into purpose somehow.
Yes, absolutely. So
Mhm.
it's, what do we do instead of being in shame and silence? It's like, what does your story prepare you for, inform you for, launch you into if you own the fullness of it?
Mhm. Yeah. Uh, so speaking of our stories, your latest book, Matters of the Heart, it's deeply rooted in emotional connection and self-discovery. So was there a pivotal moment in your life that shaped your understanding of relationships and healing?
Yes. So I dedicated the book to my mom. And actually, last year, she died of breast cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And thank you so much. And the reason it's dedicated to her is she loved deeply and fiercely. And I would say, as a result, it gave me a secure foundation. You show up to life differently when there is someone who like deeply loves you and is cheering for you.
Mhm.
And so it, brought to my mind the awareness of both the gift of loving connection and the challenges that are created when that is not present. Uh,
Mm.
so desiring for each of us to have that, whether that's from a biological parent or from someone else, to have a secure base by which you know you are loved, known, believed in, prayed for you to do well in life.
Mhm.
Uh, that is so healing and empowering.
Mhm. And so, okay, you talked about your father being a pastor growing up, and you yourself are now ordained, and you know, um, in the field that you're in, you merge faith and science in your work.
Mm.
How do you feel, I guess, your spiritual background has influenced your approach to mental health and relationships?
Yes. So it allows me to show up more holistically. Um, the roots of psychology, actually, psychology means the study of the soul. And those who are credited, with being early pioneers in the field, were largely people of faith. But then there was a shift where, as a field, we wanted to prove ourselves to be a science. And so there was a distancing from anything that could not be proven.
Mm,
And so I'm, mindful as a person of faith and someone who grew up with faith, of the research that shows women and people of color endorse a higher level of spirituality and religiosity. And so then who is harmed when, as a field, we pathologize or put down people of faith?
mhm,
Uh, and so to not make people feel like they have to choose of like, am I going to pray or am I going to therapy? Am I going to
mhm,
meditate or am I going to therapy? And that's such a false, unnecessary choice.
mhm.
But for us to be able to use all of the different aspects of ourself for our healing and for our wholeness.
Wh what I love and appreciate about yourself and the others that have come on that are in the mental health and mental wellness space is the breaking the stigma that,
Mhm.
especially if, all of the people that I've been connected to that go to church or that are religious or spiritual, the belief that, you can pray it away or that you can, you only have prayer or the church to
Yeah,
help you get through what you need to.
yeah,
And I deeply appreciate the open conversations and the knowledge that both, therapy and, prayer and faith can go hand in hand because I have seen people use that to hurt other people or make other
yeah.
people feel shame for seeking
Mhm.
additional
Mhm.
help.
Yeah, it has been so unfortunate and a disservice to people. I actually had a pastor confide in me how he felt so bad that for so many years he told members of his congregation, don't let people medicate your child, don't let people diagnose your child. And then he ended up having a son with ADHD who was greatly helped and relieved by getting therapy and medication. And,
Mhm,
he lives with, the guilt of the number of families that were misguided by his lack of knowledge.
mhm, mhm. So when I hear stories like that, like, for me, that hits home because I feel like oftentimes there are people that are in positions that could be using their influence and their power to help people, and due to ignorance or lack of knowledge, they're hurting people, it's against what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know, but oftentimes I look at, especially where I'm getting advice from, I don't like to take advice from people that I wouldn't wanna switch places with.
Mhm.
So, if I'm coming to someone for, I don't know, parenting advice, I prefer to go
Mhm.
to a parent that I see, has healthy relationship with their children,
Yeah.
or, relationship advice from someone who is in a healthy relationship.
Mhm. Mhm. It's true to be able to observe people, and as my mom used to say, it does matter how you treat people
Mhm.
because people can present with all kinds of wisdom and knowledge or charisma, but in the end, how do people feel in their presence? Do people
Mhm.
feel honored or dishonored, seen or not seen, valued or devalued?
Mhm. Well, that's big. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Early in your career, you worked with trauma survivors, correct?
Yes.
So how did that experience shape the way that you view healing and resilience?
It is important, I would say, not only from my practice, but from my lived experience. So I'm a trauma survivor. survivor of sexual assault, and then also experiencing and seeing community violence growing up in Baltimore. And then in high school, for 2 years, I lived in Liberia, West Africa. The first year was amazing. The second year, unfortunately, a civil war broke out. So I have seen violence and trauma on multiple levels. And so knowing both from working with clients and my own testimony that restoration is possible,
Mm,
that there can be more to our stories than what is done to us, but that we then get to take the pen and write the next chapter of our lives. And so it allows me to come to this work with a hope and a faith that we can reclaim ourselves.
mhm,
We will never be who we were before the violation. We don't get to erase it, but we can reclaim our joy, our trust, our intimacy, um, our confidence, that those things can be rebuilt.
mhm. I love that, and I strongly believe, like, when we are able to be an example and show other people, like, if it's possible for me, it's possible for you
Yeah.
too. Yeah, I
Mhm.
love that. Um, okay, so in your latest book, Matters of the Heart, um, it touches on control issues and emotional unavailability. So I want to touch on some of that because a lot of our listeners have been, I'm going to say, with us since a few years ago when I shared about my experience with narcissistic abuse. So I
Mhm.
would love if you could share what are some of the most common relationship patterns that prevent people from forming deeper connections.
Yeah. So, first of all, thank you for sharing your story, your testimony, and I'm glad that you survived it, because that is one of the things I think that is freeing for a lot of people, is the word of our own testimony. So, yeah, grateful for that. So in terms of emotional unavailability, it's often rooted in anxiety and insecurity.
Mhm,
So the anxiety where based on our own bad experiences or our observations, perhaps growing up of other dysfunctional or abusive relationships, where we conclude that people equal danger,
mhm,
uh, relationships equal harm and hurt and violation and mistreatment. And so then we can develop a style of keeping things very surface, because it feels safe.
mhm,
And so, you can develop the capacity. It's actually a skill that can work for you, uh, talking a lot and saying nothing, right? Right?
Yep.
So, yeah, you can do that, and in some places, that skill is needed. I tell people, like, in the workplace, a lot of times promotions are based on relationship. So if you just, like, put your head down and work hard, you may not be promoted because a
Mhm,
part of it is, like, your capacity to connect with people. Which, it's one thing if we're talking about in the workplace, keeping things surface, but then it's, can create more issue or harm or problems when our friends don't really know us or
mm,
our dating partners don't really know us, because we are performing or presenting or sending our representative, because we want to be chosen and liked.
mm,
So can figure out what do people want or what do people like, and then I'm going to present that so that I'm acceptable to the person, but yet they don't really know me,
mhm,
right? So then it's like a false intimacy or a false connection. Another way that people can hide. So one is, we can hide by not being our authentic selves.
mhm,
People also can hide with infidelity. So, if I just have multiple relationships, but I keep everyone at a distance, that's another way of not really being emotionally present. Uh,
Mhm.
we can also hide with being a workaholic and a perfectionist. So if I stay busy, that is another tactic that can be distancing. I don't have time for real connection. I don't have time for you to really know me. And that can also feel safer than slowing down and actually being known.
Wow. You listed, I'm gonna say, a lot of traits of my exes.
You're like, there they are. Yeah.
I mean, in the moment right after, you're angry, you're going through all these feelings of, what happened to you. But then when I got into my own healing journey and started to understand more about, emotional unavailability and how their traumas, I guess, cause them to be the way that they are, it
Mm,
helped me have more compassion and grace. And
yeah.
I'm not saying that what they did wasn't hurtful, but at the same
Mhm,
time, I can now come from a place where it's like, I actually feel sorry for these people.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, that you get to see, I think one of the things in the healing afterwards can be knowing that it's not all malicious,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
That they're not actually having a great time, you know. So it's one thing when you're like, "Oh my goodness, this person is so selfish. They're having their joy at my expense."
mhm,
Um, and then coming to the reality that, yes, they're making me miserable and they're miserable as well.
mhm.
Not that I then need to save or rescue them, but it just helps to understand like what is really happening here.
Mhm. Maybe you can, I guess, expand on this, but, like, a lot of the women that come to me about their, I'm gonna say, unhealthy relationships after they hear, my story or listen to parts of the podcast or read my books, they it's me helping them depersonalize the experience,
Mhm.
especially with, the narcissistic abuse, where it's, like, reminding them that you could be anybody on the planet. You could
Yeah.
have been, Sally, Sue, Jessica, it doesn't matter. That behavior that that person did is still gonna be the same so that they
Mhm.
can not internalize that it was done
Right.
specifically, like, to them.
Yes. Yeah. That's an important point because one of the things that people will often say is like, you know, oh, there's something wrong with me in terms of like why I was targeted or why I
Mhm,
was chosen.
mhm,
And similar to your point, what I discover is people who operate like that with everyone,
mhm,
right? So it's just you're filling the slot at the moment and they approach everyone with the same intentions. So the part that can be healing or empowering is not just that around thinking I was chosen because I have a problem, um, but to more think about if they approach everyone this way, it really is about how quickly I recognize it and how long I stay.
mm, mhm,
That's my liberation is like when I see it showing up, when someone approaches me with those dynamics that instead of me, with insecurity, perhaps being okay with the breadcrumbing or
mhm,
myself that I have to win them over, or like it's my job to make it work that instead I can recognize it sooner, see it for what it is, and be liberated by like, I don't have to participate in this. So
mhm,
then I can get free sooner.
mhm. When I first I'm gonna say when I had my I'm gonna say when I first, had the breakup with, I'm gonna say one of the most devastating breakups that I probably had, it's probably 6, 7 years ago, maybe,
Mm,
um, and at the time, it was, like, in my mind and eventually out loud, I was like, "I attract narcissists, like, what?
yeah.
What is it about me that I need to change? What is wrong with me?" And then,
Mhm,
I went deeper into my healing journey and started therapy and all the other things, and it was understanding not only my childhood, um, growing up, but also I thought I had boundaries. But
Mm,
learning what healthy boundaries really are and learning how to love myself and all of the other things that I thought at the time that I already knew or that I was already doing. Um,
mhm.
so I guess, many of us carry unhealed wounds that affect our ability to love fully. What are some first steps people can take to identify and address these wounds?
Yeah. So it is really in part about becoming curious about yourself and about other people so that you can start to see the pattern.
Mm,
So then it's like recognizing, because it's often easier for us to see other people, right?
mhm,
We can say like, oh, they're off, they're off, they're off, right? But it's like for me to have the humility and the openness to see myself, not in a way of like shaming or blaming, but just like that I am the one that I can shift.
mhm,
Right. Instead of making other people my project of how do I shift them? No, how do I see me and shift me so that I can begin to show up in relationships in ways that actually serve me, in ways that are healthy.
mhm,
So, then when I become curious about myself, it's like, okay. So this person either said or showed early that they did not really value me.
mm,
And yet I went out with them again.
mhm,
Right. That's the part for me to see of like, what was the message I was telling myself? So sometimes it can be the scarcity piece, which
mhm,
is easy to believe when you aren't seeing a lot of options, right?
mhm,
Sometimes why do we stay? Is like, well, nobody was showing up that was treating me better or
mhm,
like that promising something better. So this felt like my best option, right?
mhm,
So one of the things that was healing for me was realizing I can choose none of the above,
mhm.
right? Sometimes we're choosing the best out of a bunch of bad options.
Oh.
And
Yep.
so right? And so then it's like, can I tolerate none of the above, which may mean that there's a season, when I'm by myself, and that's
Mhm.
okay. That
Yes.
I'd rather choose that than choose, to continue with mistreatment.
Mhm. I know for me, one of the biggest things was learning to retrust myself.
Mhm,
My
mhm.
healing process was learning to trust Makini again.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
so I guess with so many people experiencing relational trauma, whether from family, friends, or even romantic relationships, what
Mhm.
advice do you have for someone trying to rebuild trust in others?
Yes. So I would say look at the people who you have trusted who didn't let you down. It might not always be romantic,
Mhm.
but when I can, because if not, we'll have this idea in our minds of like everybody's trash, everyone's a loser, right?
Mhm.
So like I need some wins. So when I have opened my heart to someone and they didn't end up being a user or manipulator. What did that look like? How did
Mhm.
they treat me? And what were the indications early on that made me, open up in the ways that I did, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And for us to also recognize that these things can be gradual. Sometimes we're giving people too much too soon,
Mhm.
where like either closed or we're giving everything away, including the kitchen sink. So it's like, let me instead think about the gradual growth so that I can have time to see, you know, who are people and what are the ways they are showing up for me or not showing up for me.
Mhm. That's big. I can totally relate to that because I feel like when I was going through my experience, I could have easily said, all men are trash because of my experience of choosing the wrong men. But
Yeah.
when I looked at the men around me that do love me, that do show me
Mhm.
support, that are there for me, I
Yeah.
have my father, I have my male friends, I now have my fiance. Like there are so many people that were examples to help, I'm gonna say, shift my paradigm so I didn't stick to that belief that all men are trash. I didn't lump them in, because I had proof in my life that there were really
Yeah.
amazing men.
Yes, I love that. Look for the
Yeah.
proof. And if
Yes.
you don't see it in your life, in other people's lives, that will give you hope, right?
Mhm.
So that I'm not just surrounding myself with everyone who has given up, right?
Mhm.
I've given up and everyone in my circle is like, yes, relationships suck, all men suck. Then it's going to keep me stuck. But
Mhm.
to hear the testimonies of people who have had a good experience and not to think that, oh, they're the exception. Like, oh, they get to have a good life, but I don't. But
Mhm.
to borrow that hope of like, here are these people who have had these unhealthy situations similar to mine, and they remained open, or they were closed for a season for their healing. They reopened their hearts, and like some goodness met them there.
Yeah. I mean, that's my story right now where I closed myself off for a few years to get really into my healing and understand myself, and
Mhm.
reconnected with a high school friend, and we've been together 3.5 years now. We're engaged, about to get married.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
there's hope for my friends.
Right, there is. And it gives other people hope when they hear those stories to know like, yeah, it's possible.
Mhm.
I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
what are some practical exercises or even daily habits that can help someone cultivate a healthier approach to love?
Yeah. So, one of the things that we can do is, of course, start with nourishing ourselves, because when I'm in a defeated place, then that will make me more likely to accept and expect unhealthy treatment. So, it's like, what have you done for you lately? Right? To love ourselves and nourish ourselves, and not just when we're burned out. Sometimes we neglect ourselves, and then, we physically or emotionally or spiritually break down, and then we try to do something for ourselves. But I would say to think about, for a daily practice, what is a way I can love on myself today?
Mhm.
Right? And those things don't have to be like super expensive. I mean, of course, if you have the resources, you can treat yourself to certain things, right?
Mhm.
But also like, let me love on myself with my rest. Let me love on myself with my nutrition. Let me love on myself in my boundary setting, to not tolerate or entertain things that are not nourishing to me. Let
Mhm.
me love on myself with my entertainment. Like, do the shows I watch, uh, or the social media accounts that I follow, do they leave me feeling edified or leave me feeling worse about myself?
Mhm.
So we can choose love in that way. And then I would say, in terms of like making connections, to open ourselves up to love, so that we're not just in combat mode or self isolation mode, but are we receptive to love, right?
I
Are we receptive to connection and the possibility of connection? Those things are really helpful for nourishing our hearts.
Those are that's all amazing advice. I think, the listeners should rewind that and actually take notes and write that down.
I love that.
You have had an enormous impact on the field of psychology. What legacy do you hope to leave behind in the mental health space?
I love that question. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Uh, So I would love a legacy of liberation oriented mental health professionals who are committed to promoting justice and love uh, within individuals, but also in terms of community work. So
Mm-hmm.
working with the collective, which in part is like this podcast of giving our science away, right?
Mm-hmm.
It should not just be some exclusive thing that is for like the wealthy or the people with the highest level of education, but
Mm-hmm.
finding ways to share wisdom, knowledge, compassion that is accessible.
Yeah.
So in podcasts and in books that are written for the public, in social media, in blogs, finding ways to share the information and then also highlighting wisdom from indigenous sources,
Mm-hmm.
highlighting wisdom from women, so that we're not buying into this notion of like who are the real scientists,
Right.
right? That those are only white, straight, cisgender men who are able-bodied, but recognizing wisdom in all of its various sources,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, crediting those sources is very important. Not just taking
Mm-hmm.
the knowledge, but like highlighting the various voices. And then the last thing I would say about legacy is wanting people to know that healing is not just about addressing the wounds of past hurts, but instead about, or in addition, about maximizing growth and thriving and resilience and soaring. So, for us to be able to live the fullness of our lives.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I love it. You're speaking my language.
Yay. Thank you.
Well, I love everything that you said, and then my like I wish our cameras are on because my eyes lit up when you spoke about sharing more wisdom, especially from indigenous and like indigenous communities and women, because I'm actually working on a workbook with a therapist, and like the huge basis of it is, um, you know, practices from indigenous communities, from African communities. So
Mm,
because we're so used to a lot of the information on healing out there being given to us by sources that don't look like us, or from places that were originally taken from, like you said, giving credit to, because it's originally taken from somewhere else and
yeah.
it's served to us by people that don't look like us. So
Mhm.
I think everything you said is so important.
Oh, thank you. I love that you're working on that. Doing that work is so, yeah, that's so important.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
So, okay, what does success look like for you beyond professional accolades? Like, how do you measure fulfillment in your own life?
Yes. So success is living authentically and having nourishing, loving relationships.
Hmm.
And I am happy to be in a place of both authentically being myself, showing up as myself, not being uh, so dominated by other voices that I censor or stifle myself.
Mhm.
And then, yes, having loving, nourishing relationships. So, not just being on the fast track of what we can accomplish as individuals, but yeah, attending to matters of the heart.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Mm.
in matters of the heart, I believe it provides a roadmap to greater fulfillment in relationships. If listeners could take away just one key message from the book, what would you want it to be?
I would say to invest time and energy in nourishing your relationships, to not neglect people or take people for granted, but to allow the people in your life whom you love for them to actually feel that love and
Mm,
for them to feel that they are priorities.
mhm,
Yeah.
mm, that's powerful.
Mhm.
How do you balance your own emotional and spiritual well-being while holding space for so many others in their healing journeys?
Yes. So the big word for me is mutuality and
Mhm,
reciprocity.
mhm,
So, while I pour out or give out as a professor, as a therapist, as a minister, I'm also very intentional about having relationships that are mutual, where I give and I receive.
mm,
And that is so important to break out of that mold of like, I have to be the strong one or I have to be on for everyone else. But for me to be intentional about having relationships and friendships where I can unfold, where I
mhm,
can be present, where I can receive as well as give.
mhm. I love that. Uh, so I'm thinking about a couple of, previous episodes that we've done around mother wounds, and when it comes to matters of the heart, I guess what advice would you give to the women that are listening that don't have great relationships with their mothers, that didn't get the love and nourishment as a child that they may have needed, that affected their connections or how they view connections today?
Yeah, I would first say that you deserved better
Mm,
and that there is nothing about you that disqualified you from being mothered well,
mm,
that the ways your mother did not show up for you or showed up in harmful ways was about her own brokenness and her own unhealed wounds and uh, her own lack of capacity to see the truth of you, the essence of you, and to not be threatened by it, but to pour into you. She didn't have either the will or the capacity to give you what you needed. And uh, you deserved that. And you also don't have to be stuck as a result of that.
mhm,
Instead of remaining still and stuck in a place of asking why, that I encourage you to shift the question from why to what now,
mhm,
right? There will never be a satisfactory response to why you didn't get it from her. You may start to understand parts of it if you look at her as a human being, not just as a mother. But at this stage, at this point in your life, you can begin to ask, what do I want to give myself now? And what do I want to position myself to receive from those who have the capacity and the will to give it to me?
mm,
And so we can reparent ourselves. We can mother ourselves. We can nourish ourselves by giving ourselves the things that we did not get, to give ourselves the care, the compassion, the understanding, the valuing, the priority that we wish we had gotten from someone else.
mhm.
So I will pour into me and I will see me and I will set boundaries for me so that I can be loved well.
Love it. Well, I think we'll have to make that entire thing a soundbite. Like
Yeah. Wonderful.
that was beautiful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You often speak about the importance of community and connection. So for those who feel isolated, what are some steps that they can take to find and cultivate their own support system?
Yes. So I would say one, you can deepen the connections you already have. Sometimes we know people, but we keep them very surface or we treat it like an acquaintance. And transparency can be contagious, right? If I'm talking to someone who becomes more real, then often I will become more real or more transparent as well.
Mhm.
So instead of just saying like, oh, everybody's just fake or everybody's just surface, to consider some of those people are waiting for an opportunity to go deeper, right?
Mhm.
And so instead of us assuming they can't meet us there, to share something that's more authentic, right? Instead of how are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm blessed.
Mhm.
How are you? I'm spectacular. To give a more honest answer. So that's a easy way to start with the connections I have. Let me try to share something more real. And no, not everyone's going to meet you there. Some people are going to be like they didn't want to hear all of that.
Mhm.
But then there are going to be other people who are like, oh, wow, finally, someone's being real, right?
Mhm.
So deepen the connections that you already have and then open yourself to widening your circle. Sometimes we prioritize loyalty over fulfillment. So
Mm.
we're just keeping connections with people and it's not nourishing. It's not fulfilling. But just so we can say, oh, we've been friends since the fifth grade. Well, okay. Right. I'm not saying that we have to eliminate everybody, but broaden your circle, right?
Mhm.
To say, let me try to meet some new people, which will also require us taking initiative, right?
Yes.
Not to always wait for someone to invite us, but let's invite someone else to lunch or to have tea or to make some connection.
Mhm. Great advice. Love it. Love it.
Mhm.
Before we go to the final segment of the show, I would love if you could tell the listeners where they can stay connected with you, where they can learn more from you and about you, where they can buy your books.
Wonderful. Yes, my website is drthema.com, Drthema. You can follow me on Instagram, Dr. period, and then Thema. I'm also on X and on TikTok. You can find my books everywhere that books are sold. So at major bookstores and then at independent bookstores, which we always want to encourage people to support. I want to also say if you don't consider yourself a big reader, that's okay. The book is also available in an audio version, and so I'm reading the book to you and would love for you to listen and or read it for yourself. And my events page is on my website that will let you know if I'm coming to your city or to a place close by.
Love it. Love it. Love it. I will have all of your links in the detailed section of the episode so they don't have to search too far. They can just click and connect.
Wonderful.
So the final segment of the show is kind of like a rapid fire.
Yeah.
You can answer one word or one sentence, but I also don't like to box people in. So if you feel the need to expand, you're more than welcome to do so.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. First question. Name one simple actionable step listeners can take to begin healing their hearts.
Tell yourself the truth.
Mm,
Mhm.
love it. Um, name a book that has changed or greatly impacted your life.
I Dance with God, written by my mother, Cecilia Bryant.
Love it. What would you say is your superpower?
Healing.
Mm,
Mhm.
love it. If you could describe yourself in one word, what would it be?
Dancing.
When was the last time you cried?
Probably last week, missing my mom.
Mm. When was the last time you apologized to someone?
Uh, Probably my partner, which is always important to own your stuff when you
Mhm,
mistake.
mhm. When and where are you the happiest?
Uh, and my circle of sisters called the Gathering Sisters. We laugh a lot and can cry and learn from each other.
Love it, love it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, last but not least, what do you wish women would do more of?
Roar.
Love it.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thema, for not only sharing your time and your energy with us, but for your expertise and your transparency. I truly, truly appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation and love the work you're doing.
Thank you. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to pour into yourself too. My latest book, Shades of You, is a celebration of Black beauty and self-care through coloring, journaling, and affirmations. So relax, reflect, and express yourself, and grab your copy on Amazon or at McKinney-Smith.com. And to all of my healers out there, thank you for tuning in. Because of you, we rank globally in the top 1.5% of most popular podcasts out there. If today's episode resonated with you, please subscribe, rate the show, and leave us a review and let us know your thoughts on Apple Podcast. Now, I want to challenge you to think of 2 women that need to hear what Dr. Thema shared today. If you benefited from this conversation, I'm sure they will too. Screenshot this episode and you can tag Dr. Thema at dr.thema. You can tag myself at The Real McKinney Smith, and let's keep this conversation going. A healthy community is a healing community, and a healing community is full of hope. So let's continue to heal